The keys felt heavy in Sarah Chen's trembling hands as she stood before the forest green door of 147 Maple Ridge Drive. After 5 years of 60-hour work weeks, ramen dinners, and a studio apartment so small she could touch both walls with outstretched arms, she finally owned something beautiful, something that was entirely hers. The four-bedroom colonial house sat on a tree-lined street in Westfield Heights, complete with hardwood floors that gleamed like honey, granite countertops that reflected the morning light, and a backyard spacious enough for the family barbecues she'd dreamed about during those lonely nights in her cramped apartment. Every sacrifice had led to this moment: the promotion to senior marketing executive, the countless weekends spent working instead of socializing, the careful budgeting that meant saying no to dinners out and yes to instant coffee. "I can't believe you actually did it," her mother had said when Sarah shared the news, though her tone carried more surprise than pride. "A house that big for just one person seems awfully selfish." Sarah had brushed off the comment, too excited to let anything dampen her joy. She'd immediately invited her entire extended family for a housewarming weekend. Her parents, her brother Mark with his wife Jennifer, her sister Lisa with her husband Tom, and their 3 young children. For the first time in her adult life, she could host everyone comfortably. The weekend visit stretched into a week, then 2 weeks, then a month. What began as excited family bonding quickly devolved into something Sarah hadn't anticipated. Her parents settled into the master guest room as if they owned it, leaving wet towels on her pristine hardwood floors and expecting her to prepare elaborate meals every evening after her demanding workdays. Her mother criticized everything from Sarah's wasteful organic groceries to her show-off kitchen appliances, while simultaneously using both freely. Mark treated the house like his personal entertainment venue. Without asking, he'd invite his college buddies over for poker nights that lasted until 3 a.m., leaving beer bottles scattered across her dining room table and cigarette butts on her patio. When Sarah gently mentioned that she had early morning meetings, he laughed. "Come on, sis, live a little. This is what houses are for, bringing people together." Lisa's children, ages 6, 8, and 10, ran through the house like it was a playground. They jumped on Sarah's cream-colored furniture with muddy shoes, used her walls as canvases for their artwork, and somehow managed to break her favorite ceramic lamp within the first week. When Sarah mentioned the damage, Lisa shrugged. "Kids will be kids. Besides, you don't have children, so you don't understand how hard it is to control them." The utility bills tripled, the grocery expenses quadrupled. Sarah found herself staying late at the office, not just to manage her increasing workload, but to avoid the chaos that had consumed her sanctuary. She'd come home to find every dish dirty, the bathrooms destroyed, and her family lounging in her living room, watching her streaming services while complaining about being bored in the suburbs. Nobody offered to contribute to groceries despite eating everything in sight. Nobody helped with cleaning, despite creating most of the mess. Nobody acknowledged that Sarah was working full-time while serving as their unpaid housekeeper, chef, and entertainment director. Instead, they made jokes about her fancy lifestyle and how she'd forgotten where she came from. 3 months after buying her dream home, Sarah felt like a stranger in it. She'd worked so hard to create a space of peace and pride, only to watch it become a free-for-all crash pad for family members who seemed to view her success as their entitlement rather than her achievement. The worst part wasn't the mess or the money. It was the growing realization that the people she loved most saw her not as someone who deserved celebration, but as someone who owed them something she'd never agreed to give. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in late September. Sarah had arrived home early from work, fighting off a migraine that had been building all day. She'd hoped to find a quiet moment in her own house, maybe take a bath in her master bathroom, or simply sit in her living room without someone asking her to fix them a snack. Instead, she found the house empty, except for the usual aftermath: pizza boxes on her coffee table, wet swimsuits draped over her dining room chairs, and what appeared to be Play-Doh ground into her Persian rug. The family had apparently gone out for the evening, without bothering to clean up or even leaving a note. Sarah was picking hardened clay from her rug fibers when she heard Mark's distinctive laugh echoing from the backyard. Her family had returned and were gathered on her patio, their voices carrying through the open kitchen window. She moved closer to close it, not wanting to deal with anyone in her current state, when she heard her own name. "I'm telling you, Sarah's got it made now," Mark was saying, his voice thick with beer. "Big house, fancy neighborhood, probably making six figures. It's about time she started giving back to the family that supported her all these years. Seriously, Lisa chimed in, and Sarah could hear the eye roll in her voice. She acts like we're such a burden, but hello, we're family. She wouldn't even have gotten this far without mom and dad paying for her college. Sarah's hand froze on the window latch. She had paid for her own college, with student loans that she'd only finished paying off 2 years ago. The girl's gotten too big for her britches, her father's voice boomed. All this success has gone to her head. She used to be humble, grateful. Now she walks around like she's better than us. I know, right, Jennifer? Mark's wife joined in. Like, we get it, you have a nice house. But family is family. She should be happy to share what she has. It's not like she has kids or a husband to worry about. Sarah's mother's voice was the final blow. I've been thinking we should get spare keys made. Make this arrangement more permanent. Sarah works all the time anyway. The house just sits empty. We might as well put it to good use. And honestly, it would be good for her character to learn to put family first for once. The group murmured their agreement, laughing about their vacation home and hotel. Mark suggested they should start planning their Thanksgiving stay, joking that Sarah would probably try to charge them for turkey. Lisa added that her kids were already calling it Aunt Sarah's funhouse, and had started planning their next visit before this one was even over. Sarah stood frozen in her kitchen, listening to the people she'd sacrificed for mock her generosity and planned to exploit it even further. Every assumption was wrong. They hadn't supported her through college, they hadn't helped her achieve success, and they certainly hadn't shown her any gratitude for opening her home. Instead, they'd created a narrative where her accomplishments were somehow their due, where her hard work entitled them to free room and board. The migraine that had been building all day exploded behind her eyes, but for the first time in months, Sarah's mind was crystal clear. She understood now that this would never end on its own. They didn't see her as family who deserved respect. They saw her as a resource to be exploited. They'd convinced themselves that she owed them this lifestyle, that her success was partially theirs by right of relation. As she listened to them plan their extended stay through the holidays, Sarah realized that all her hints, complaints, and gentle requests had fallen on deaf ears, because they'd never intended to listen. They'd found their golden goose and they had no intention of giving up their free ride. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd revealed their true feelings within earshot of someone who'd spent 5 years learning to be very, very strategic. The next morning, Sarah woke before dawn with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. While her family slept off their evening of mockery in her guest rooms, she sat at her kitchen island with her laptop and a cup of coffee, opening a new document titled Project Independence. Her marketing background had taught her that successful campaigns required thorough research, careful planning, and flawless execution. If her family wanted to treat her house like a business, she would give them exactly what they'd asked for, just not in the way they expected. First, she needed documentation. Sarah spent her lunch breaks over the next week quietly installing small security cameras in common areas, disguised as decorative items and wellness devices. The nanny cam teddy bear in the living room captured Mark's friends using her furniture as footrests and spilling beer on her upholstery. The air freshener camera in the kitchen recorded her mother complaining about Sarah's cheap paper towels while using an entire roll to clean up Lisa's kids' art project. The smoke detector camera in the dining room documented the pizza and wings feast that left grease stains on her antique table. She began keeping meticulous records, utility bills that had skyrocketed from $180 to $540 per month, grocery receipts showing her food budget had increased from $200 to $800 monthly, and repair estimates for the damaged lamp, stained rug, and gouged hardwood floor, where someone had dragged furniture without protective pads. The numbers were staggering. In 3 months, her family had cost her nearly $4,000 in additional expenses and damages. Meanwhile, Sarah maintained her facade of exhausted resignation. She continued making dinner every night, cleaning up after everyone, and enduring their complaints about her attitude when she seemed tired. But now, every slight and criticism was fuel for her growing plan. During her research, she discovered that her neighborhood's homeowners association actually encouraged short-term rentals, provided they met certain standards. Properties similar to hers were renting for $280 to $250 per night on various platforms. A quick calculation showed she could potentially earn more in 2 weeks of legitimate rentals than she currently spent supporting her freeloading family in an entire month. Sarah began calling property management companies, presenting herself as a successful professional interested in investment opportunities. She scheduled consultations during work hours, claiming she was viewing properties for a potential client. The third company, Prestige Property Partners, impressed her with their comprehensive services, professional photography, guest screening, cleaning coordination, and damage protection policies that actually worked. The apartment hunt was trickier. Sarah couldn't use her usual methods without arousing suspicion, so she enlisted her college roommate Emma, who worked in real estate. Emma found her a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in a secure building downtown, close to Sarah's office. It was modern, efficient, and best of all, it required a reference and credit check that would eliminate anyone who couldn't prove they belonged there. "Are you sure about downsizing?" Emma asked as they toured the apartment. "It's gorgeous, but you just bought that house. Sometimes you need to simplify your life," Sarah replied, signing the lease agreement. "Besides, I'm keeping the house, I'm just changing how it's used." The most delicate part of her plan involved timing. Sarah needed her entire family present for maximum impact, but she also needed to ensure they couldn't simply refuse to leave. She began subtly encouraging them to extend their stay through Thanksgiving, mentioning how nice it would be to have everyone together for the holiday. Her family, oblivious to her true intentions, eagerly agreed. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Sarah met with Marcus Webb from Prestige Property Partners at a coffee shop near her office. She signed a comprehensive management agreement that would take effect December 5th. The contract was ironclad. Once activated, the property would be exclusively managed by their company, with all bookings and access controlled through their system. "We'll need about a week to prepare the property," Marcus explained. "Professional photos, deep cleaning, safety inspections, smart lock installation. After that, you could see your first booking within days." "Actually," Sarah said, sliding another document across the table, "I'd like to make the first booking myself. A family reunion for 8 people, checking in December 1st for 1 week. I'll pay the full rate, of course." Marcus looked puzzled but shrugged. "Your property, your choice. Though I have to ask, why book your own house?" Sarah smiled for the first time in months. "Let's call it a family education experience. They're about to learn the difference between being guests and being family." That evening, Sarah sat in her living room, watching her parents complain about the movie selection, while Lisa's kids used her sofa as a trampoline. Mark was in the kitchen, loudly rummaging through her refrigerator and complaining that she'd bought fancy Greek yogurt instead of regular. 3 more weeks, she told herself. 3 more weeks of playing the role of the accommodating host, while behind the scenes, every piece fell into place. Her family had taught her that blood meant nothing without respect, that generosity without boundaries was just enabling, and that sometimes the people who should support your dreams are the first ones to exploit them. But they'd also underestimated her. They saw her success as luck, her sacrifices as privilege, and her kindness as weakness. Soon they would discover exactly how strategic and strong the woman they'd taken for granted could be. Thanksgiving dinner was a masterpiece of performance art. Sarah served a perfect meal to her unsuspecting family, accepting their backhanded compliments about finally learning to cook for a crowd and listening to their plans for Christmas decorations throughout their house. She even smiled when her father raised his wine glass, her wine in a toast to family taking care of family. The next morning, while everyone nursed their hangovers and planned a Black Friday shopping using her car, Sarah made the call that would change everything. "Marcus, it's Sarah Chen. I'm ready to activate the property management contract." Today, by noon, Sarah had printed 8 copies of a comprehensive document she'd titled Financial Summary and House Rules Agreement. She gathered her family in the living room, her hands steady despite her racing heart. "I need to discuss some changes with everyone," she began, distributing the packets. "Over the past 3 months, I've been tracking the expenses related to your extended stay." Mark looked up from his phone with mild annoyance. "Expenses? What are you talking about?" Sarah opened her own copy to the first page. "Utility increases $1,008. Additional groceries $1,800. Cleaning supplies and repairs entertainment and miscellaneous $600. Total additional costs due to extended family occupancy 5. The room fell silent. Lisa's husband Tom actually laughed. "You're not seriously trying to charge us for staying with family?" "I'm not trying to charge you," Sarah said calmly. "I'm showing you what this arrangement has actually cost me. But here's the thing, I've found a solution that works for everyone." She flipped to the next page, which showed professional photographs of her house staged for rental. As of December 1st, this property will be managed by Prestige Property Partners as a short-term rent. You're welcome to continue staying here, but you'll need to book through their platform and pay the market rate. Her mother's face flushed red. Sarah Elizabeth Chen, what is this nonsense? This nonsense is called running a business instead of a charity, Sarah replied, her voice gaining strength. The rate is $320 per night, with a 3-night minimum. There's also a $500 security deposit and a cleaning fee. Mark stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood. Are you out of your mind? We're your family, exactly, and family should treat each other with respect, not like free hotel staff. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened the property management app. I've already made your first booking for you. Check-in is December 1st for 7 nights. The total comes to $2740 including all fees. Jennifer, Mark's wife, spoke for the first time, her voice shrill. This is insane. You can't just kick us out. I'm not kicking you out. I'm giving you a choice. Sarah's marketing training had taught her to always present options. You can book and pay like any other guests, or you can find alternative accommodations. But the free ride ends in 72 hours. Lisa, who had been frantically reading through the packet, looked up with tears in her eyes. Where is this coming from? We're family. We helped raise you. No, you didn't. The words came out harder than Sarah intended, but she didn't soften them. Mom and Dad, you didn't pay for my college. I have the loan documents to prove it. Mark, you didn't help me get my job. You told me I was too ambitious and would never find a man. Lisa, you didn't support my dream of homeownership. You said I was showing off and trying to be better than everyone else. Sarah's father stood up, his face purple with rage. How dare you speak to your family this way, after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me? Sarah challenged. Besides eat my food, use my utilities, damage my property, and complain about my hospitality. The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of accusations and denial. Mark accused her of becoming a greedy corporate drone. Lisa sobbed about Sarah destroying the family. Her parents tag-teamed between guilt trips about their ungrateful daughter and threats about disowning her. Through it all, Sarah remained seated, watching the people she'd once prioritized above her own well-being reveal their true selves. No one apologized for the mess, the expenses, or the lack of contribution. No one acknowledged her sacrifices or her generosity. Instead, they doubled down on their entitlement, as if their outrage could guilt her back into compliance. You know what? Mark finally shouted over the chaos. Fine, we'll show you what happens when you put money before family. Don't come crying to us when you're old and alone in this big, empty house. Actually, Sarah said quietly, and something in her tone made everyone stop yelling. I won't be in this house. I'm moving out Monday. The silence that followed was deafening. Her mother was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper. What do you mean moving out? Sarah smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time during the entire confrontation. I mean, I've found a beautiful apartment downtown. 1 bedroom, top floor security, and absolutely no room for uninvited guests. This house will be exclusively a rental property, but where will we stay when we visit? Lisa asked, seemingly unable to process what she was hearing. You'll book a reservation like everyone else, Sarah replied. Or you'll stay at a hotel. Or maybe you'll visit less frequently, and actually make those visits meaningful instead of treating them like extended vacations at my expense. Mark's face had gone from red to white. You can't be serious. You're going to choose money over your own family. No, Sarah said, standing up and gathering her papers. I'm choosing self-respect over enabling your entitlement. There's a difference. As Sarah walked toward the stairs to pack her remaining belongings, she heard her mother's voice behind her, shaky and desperate. Sarah, please, let's talk about this rationally. We can work something out. Sarah paused at the bottom of the staircase and turned back to face the 8 people who had taken advantage of her generosity for months. You had 3 months to work something out. Instead, you made jokes about Hotel Sarah and planned to make spare keys so you could come and go as you pleased. Well, congratulations, you're getting exactly what you wanted, a hotel experience. You'll just have to pay for it like everyone else. Sarah spent Saturday in her room, packing the belongings she hadn't already secretly moved to her new apartment. The house below buzzed with frantic family meetings, hushed phone calls, and the occasional raised voice. She could hear them strategizing, probably hoping she'd come to her senses by morning. Sunday morning brought an eerie calm. Her family moved around the house like ghosts, shooting her wounded looks and whispering among themselves. Mark tried cornering her in the kitchen with apologies that felt more like negotiations. Lisa left a handwritten note under her door about the kids missing their favorite aunt. Her parents alternated between silent treatment and dramatic sighs whenever she entered a room. Sarah ignored it all. She'd learned in marketing that once you make a strategic decision, you don't waver unless new information fundamentally changes the situation. Nothing had changed except her family's realization that their manipulation tactics weren't working. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching the mood in the house. Sarah was in the kitchen making coffee when she heard the rumble of a large engine outside. Through the window, she saw a massive moving truck turning onto Maple Ridge Drive, followed by a sleek black SUV. "What's that?" Lisa asked, appearing beside her with messy hair and panic in her voice. "That," Sarah said calmly, sipping her coffee, "would be Premier Moving Services." Right on time, the truck pulled into Sarah's driveway with a loud hiss of air brakes, and Sarah watched her family's faces drain of color as the reality of the situation finally hit home. This wasn't a bluff. This wasn't a negotiation tactic. Sarah was actually leaving. Mark burst through the front door like a man possessed. "You can't do this. You can't just abandon your own house." "I'm not abandoning it," Sarah replied, opening the door for the movers. "I'm optimizing it. Good morning, gentlemen. Everything that needs to go is labeled with green tape." The moving crew, clearly accustomed to family drama, nodded professionally and began unloading equipment. Behind them, Marcus Webb from Prestige Property Partners emerged from the SUV with a tablet and a professional camera. "Chen," he greeted her warmly, then surveyed the chaos of Sarah's family scattered around the living room in various states of undress and distress. "I see we have current occupants, temporary occupants," Sarah corrected. "They're checking out today. Actually, Marcus, I'd like you to meet my family. Everyone, this is Marcus Webb, your new property manager." Marcus, clearly a man who dealt with difficult transitions before, smiled diplomatically. "Pleasure to meet you all. We have your booking confirmation right here. Checkout is 11 a.m. today, with the new reservation beginning at 3 p.m. Sarah's mother, who had been silent since the truck arrived, finally found her voice. "New reservation? What new reservation?" Marcus consulted his tablet. "The Johnson family from Connecticut. Anniversary celebration. They specifically requested this property after seeing the photos and reviews online." "Reviews?" Tom stammered. "What reviews? It's not even listed yet." "Actually, it went live this morning," Marcus said proudly. "We've already received 12 inquiries for next month. Apparently, properties in this neighborhood are in high demand." Sarah felt a surge of vindication. While her family had been treating her home like a crash pad, strangers were willing to pay premium rates to stay here and would actually respect the property. The next 3 hours were a symphony of controlled chaos. The movers efficiently packed and removed Sarah's remaining belongings, while Marcus conducted a professional walkthrough, documenting every stain, scratch, and piece of damage with digital precision. Meanwhile, Sarah's family scrambled to pack their own belongings, finally understanding that their free ride was truly over. "The security deposit will cover most of the cleaning and minor repairs," Marcus told Sarah quietly, showing her the damage assessment on his tablet. "Though I'm afraid some of these stains may require professional restoration." Sarah nodded, unsurprised. "Invoice me for whatever isn't covered. I want this place perfect for paying guests." As the moving truck pulled away with the last of her belongings, Sarah's family stood in the driveway like refugees from their own entitlement. Mark made one final desperate attempt at reconciliation. "Sarah, come on. We're sorry. Okay, we didn't realize. We can make this work. We'll contribute to expenses. We'll help clean." "You had 3 months to make that offer," Sarah interrupted, climbing into her car. "The time for compromise ended when you decided to make spare keys behind my back." Jennifer stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Where are we supposed to go? Our lease doesn't start for 2 weeks." Sarah felt a moment of genuine sympathy, but she pushed it aside. These were adults who had made choices, and those choices had consequences. "There's a Holiday Inn Express about 10 minutes from here. Or you could book the house for tonight. I believe there's still availability." Her father, who had been ominously quiet all morning, finally exploded. "This is what your fancy education taught you, to abandon your family? To choose money over blood. Sarah looked at him through her car window. This man who had raised her but never truly supported her dreams. Who had criticized her success while benefiting from it. No, Dad. My education taught me to recognize the difference between family and people who use familial guilt to exploit my generosity. Real family celebrates your success, not resents it. Real family offers to help, not expects to be served. Real family respects your boundaries, not tramples them. She started her engine as Marcus approached with his tablet. Ms. Chen, the Johnsons just texted. They're running early, ETA 2:30 p.m. Perfect, Sarah said, rolling down her window. Family, you have 30 minutes to finish clearing your belongings. After that, you'll need to vacate the premises, so we can prepare for the next guest. As Sarah drove away, she caught a glimpse in her rearview mirror of her family standing in the driveway, surrounded by hastily packed suitcases, and the dawning realization that their actions had consequences they'd never considered. For the first time in months, Sarah felt like she could breathe freely. The house that had become a prison of obligation was finally going to serve its intended purpose, creating joy and memories for people who valued and respected it enough to pay for the privilege. 3 weeks later, Sarah sat in her new apartment's floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights twinkle below while she reviewed the rental income report on her laptop. The numbers were even better than Marcus had projected. The house had been booked solid since opening, with guests leaving glowing reviews about the immaculate property and thoughtful amenities. The immediate aftermath had been predictably dramatic. Mark had left 17 voicemails, ranging from apologetic to furious to desperately bargaining. Lisa had enlisted their elderly grandmother to call and guilt-trip Sarah about breaking up the family. Her parents had oscillated between the silent treatment and sending long rambling emails about her betrayal of family values. But something interesting had happened in those 3 weeks. Extended family members, aunts, uncles, and cousins who had heard various versions of the story began reaching out. Some were critical, having been fed Mark and Lisa's narrative about Sarah's greed and selfishness. But others, particularly her cousin Maya, who worked as a financial advisor, called with a different perspective. I heard what happened, Maya had said during their coffee meeting the previous weekend. And honestly, good for you. I've been watching Mark and Lisa coast through life expecting handouts from everyone. Someone needed to set boundaries. More surprisingly, Jennifer, Mark's wife, had texted Sarah privately. I'm sorry about how things went down. Living with your family rent-free for months wasn't Mark's idea originally, but once we started, he got comfortable. Too comfortable. We found our own place last week, and honestly it feels good to be responsible for ourselves again. The most unexpected contact came from her neighbor, Miss Patterson, an elderly woman who lived next door. She knocked on Sarah's apartment door one evening, holding a plate of homemade cookies. I hope you don't mind me tracking you down, Mrs. Patterson said. I got your address from that nice property manager. I wanted to thank you. Thank me. Sarah was confused. Dear, I've lived next to your house for 30 years. The noise, the parties, the trash left in the yard. It was getting unbearable. I was actually considering moving, but these past few weeks, with the rental guests, perfect neighbors, quiet, respectful, clean. You've given me my peaceful retirement back. Sarah realized that her family's behavior hadn't just affected her, it had impacted everyone around them. The rental guests, who paid for the privilege of staying there, treated the property and neighborhood with the respect that her own family had never shown. The financial success was undeniable. In 3 weeks, the rental income had exceeded what her family had cost her in 3 months. More importantly, Sarah was sleeping through the night for the first time since buying the house. Her productivity at work had skyrocketed without the constant stress of coming home to chaos and criticism. But the real transformation was internal. Sarah had discovered something powerful about herself. She was capable of making difficult decisions and standing by them, even when it meant disappointing people she loved. The guilt that had initially gnawed at her was gradually replaced by self-respect and pride in her own strength. 6 months later, Sarah received a call that surprised her. Sarah, it's Lisa. Her sister's voice was subdued, lacking its usual entitled edge. I wanted to call and apologize. Really apologize, not just ask for something. Sarah waited, saying nothing. Tom and I have been in marriage counseling, Lisa continued. The therapist made us look at our patterns, how we've been living. Sarah, we were using you. I knew it, but I convinced myself we deserved it because we're family. That's not how family should work. No, it isn't, Sarah agreed quietly. The kids ask about you all the time. They miss their aunt, but I understand if you need space. I just wanted you to know that we're working on ourselves, on being people who deserve to have you in our lives again. It wasn't the dramatic reconciliation from a movie, but it was something real. Sarah agreed to meet Lisa for lunch the following week. Neutral territory, limited time, a chance to see if genuine change was possible. Mark proved more stubborn. He'd found a new target for his freeloading, staying with various friends until wearing out his welcome. Eventually, Jennifer gave him an ultimatum: grow up or lose his family. He chose growth, grudgingly, and found a job and an apartment. He never apologized to Sarah directly, but he stopped bad-mouthing her to relatives, which felt like progress. Her parents remained bitter, spinning stories about their ungrateful daughter to anyone who would listen. Sarah felt sad about losing their relationship, but she'd learned that some people were more invested in being victims than in personal growth. She sent them birthday cards and holiday greetings, keeping the door open if they ever chose to walk through it honestly. 1 year after buying her dream home, Sarah stood in the property during a rare vacant weekend, conducting the annual maintenance inspection with Marcus. The house looked better than when she'd first bought it. The rental income had funded professional cleaning, minor upgrades and preventive maintenance that kept everything in perfect condition. You know, Marcus said, reviewing the year-end financial report, you've created something special here. This property has a 98% satisfaction rating and a 6-month booking waitlist. You could probably raise the rate. Sarah smiled, running her hand along the granite countertop that now gleamed without food stains or water spots. It's not about the money anymore, Marcus. It's about what this place represents. Which is that boundaries aren't selfish. They're necessary. That respect has to be mutual, even in families. And that sometimes the best way to help people is to stop enabling them. She looked around the living room where her family had once lounged in entitled comfort, now pristine and ready for guests who would appreciate it. This house taught me that I'm worth more than being taken for granted. As they locked up and left, Sarah felt a deep sense of completion. The scared, overwhelmed woman who had stood in this driveway a year ago, keys trembling in her hand, had evolved into someone who valued herself enough to demand respect. Her family might have treated her house like a hotel, but in doing so, they'd given her the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that she deserved better, and the strength to create it for herself. The moving truck had carried away more than just her belongings that day. It had transported her from a life of obligation into one of choice. And that, Sarah realized, was worth more than any family approval she might have lost along the way.